This is what you would see if it wasn't for the hard-working volunteers at Channel 10. But thanks to their great effort, this is what you get.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone. This afternoon we're going to be talking to 4 women working in our community and a group of students from Trafalgar. And my name is Fran Wallis and I'm the coordinator of a project called Role Modeling. And this is, got the giggles, eh? This is a project that's designed by the West Kootenay Women's Association to empower and enable young people in our community to broaden their career choices by giving them some first-hand exposure to women working in our community. And how we do this is by making the connection between the two. So before we proceed, I'd like to give our viewers a little background information. And let's see. Do any of you know how many women are in the labor force in Canada?
No.
No. Well, would you like to guess? Well, yeah. I was looking for a percentage. How about that?
60%.
60%?
79%.
Pretty close, pretty close. It's actually, well, according to 1986 statistics, it's 44%. But of course, that's 86, and probably it's more than that now.
Ooh.
So, but I'd like to give you a little bit of background information on how this project happened, because this is the second stage of it. In '86, the Kootenay Women's Works did a project called, actually the West Kootenay Women's Association did a project called Women's Work, which was designed to help chronically unemployed women get jobs in the Kootenays. And they discovered that at that time that these women who were 25 to 40 hadn't done much career planning. I'm going to give you another test if you don't stop giggling. Anyways, from there, they realized with the Labour Canada stats, too, that young girls at that age really weren't preparing themselves. They really didn't think that they would be participating in the labour market. And then, of course, that contradicts the statistic that we just discovered, right, 44%. But by 1990, things had changed, and the Teachers Federation report indicated that they were making plans now, but they really didn't have any clear ways to take those steps to implement what their goals were. So as a result of that research and a local survey done with some kids in this school district, they came up with this role modeling project, because one of the ways that we all learn best is by example. So getting to talk to somebody is sort of one of the best ways we learn. So I think, moving right along here, I'd like to introduce the first person we're going to talk to today, and that's Kelsi Michaels from Kootenay Broadcasting. Just a sec, we get a special treat. We're going to hear her on tape.
For ladies only, Sweet Scandal's first annual very special sale. It's happening now. All winter stock is half price, including such popular names as Jones New York Career Wear, Mondo Pants, Jackdale Blouses, and of course, Linda Lingerie. Don't miss out on these
So that's probably one of the commercials that the first commercials that I ever did. What did you think of that one?
That was really funny.
Well, I don't know, but what did you guys think? Oh, sure, yeah.
So that was just one of the not so hot moments about your job, eh?
But it's a lot of fun. Radio is a blast. Like, it really is. Like, you said you wanted to get into sportscasting? Yeah. Probably on radio? Yeah. It is, like, you will really have a lot of fun. It's, I don't know, does anybody else want to get into radio, do you think?
No.
You're just here for a good time.
Right. Anyway, tell us what your day's like. Tell us more about how the day looks, you know?
Well, my job is really weird because I don't really have a set job. Like, my job is not just an announcer or just a community events person or just a sports person or whatever. I do like almost everything. You do that when you first get into radio. You try everything. Like, I've done probably everything except for be the boss. I haven't gotten that far yet. But radio is really spontaneous. You're on the edge of like the latest music. Like, even a station like, should I say that? Even a station like KBS. KBS is a good station. It's a great station to work for because, yeah, it's a starting station, which is cool. Like, I mean, you know, I didn't expect to go to CFOX in Vancouver right away because that is obviously impossible.
You're just out of school, aren't you?
Yeah, I just got out in April, just out of college. It's a 2-year program. And there's a similar program at SAIT in Calgary and one at UBC. Or not UBC, what's that other one?
BCIT,
Is that
I
what it's
think
called?
it is, yeah.
It's it's a 2-year program. So probably if you were applying, is that what you'd, or you just have no idea?
I have no idea.
So, what's a good question here? What are the prerequisites to get into the school if you were interested in a career in broadcasting?
A program like radio or TV or anything to do with the media, just because it's media and it's supposed to be a lot of fun and stuff, it's always oversubscribed. So there's always like probably
too many students for the number of seats in the room.
Exactly,
really.
That's right.
Right.
So I think you really have to want to get into it because if you don't, you know, obviously there's no point in even trying to get in because the courses, again, it's really oversubscribed. It's there's probably about a 12-person intake every course, and there's probably about 400 or 500 applicants.
So what do you have to be good at in order to get in? I mean, what are the...
I think it depends what you want to do. Like, if you want to get into sports, Chris, you have to obviously, knowing about sports will help you a lot, and looking good. So work on that a bit. Yeah. and having
pretty good.
Yeah, having a good voice probably makes a lot of difference.
What about your marks, though? What about your school marks?
Oh no.
I think it really depends on the individual because you have to write down, like when you, in any kind of course like this, you have to write kind of a summary of what you've done so far to really show that you want to get into. Like if you volunteered at places like a radio station, a community station like KBS or something like that, or if you wrote for the school newspaper or something and you show that, you know, you really want to get into the media business, then that'll make a difference. And it doesn't matter if you're really, you know, like an F student obviously would not get in, but I mean anything else, you know, as long as you try.
Your English and your writing and things.
It's got to be above average, I think, probably.
You have to write.
Do they look at any of your electives?
Your electives, what do you mean, like your math and your...
Drama and gym?
Oh, no. Is that what electives are? Drama and gym and stuff? Probably not, I don't think so.
Well, drama seems like it would certainly lend itself to a career in broadcasting for sure.
I guess it depends. I never took it, so I don't know. Yeah, I'm not really sure. But does anybody else? Do you guys have any other questions?
Yeah. Like you have to be a good writer in broadcasting.
Okay, well, I think, again, this goes back to when you first start out, you do just about everything. Like I wrote that commercial for Sweet Scandals. You can tell, like it's, you know, I mean, it's not the greatest commercial you've ever heard, but I mean, it's, you have to be able to write what you're going to say when you go into a sports cast. Like Chicago dumped Toronto, blah, blah, blah. The Oilers, you know, bounced, yeah, whatever. You got to be able to do that, and you got to be able to...
verbs.
Exactly. Think quick on your feet. Like if the camera comes to you or the mic's on, you know, you got to be sitting there going, oh, God, you know, what am I... Exactly, yeah, that's another good point. Exactly. Anything else? Does anybody...
When you are talking like that on a commercial, do you find it hard to be always, you know, just so hyper when you're talking like...
Yes, definitely, because even when I go in, like I'm a weekend announcer, I'm on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights from 6 to midnight. Little plug there. So you guys better listen to me at least once, tell me what you think. But you go in there and like, I just got into a car accident a couple weeks ago, and I had to go in the very next day and pretend like I was all bouncy and, you know, and everything like that. And it's really, I know it's hard, like you go in there and, you know, you just want to say, get lost, I just want to, you know, sit here and sit at my desk. Exactly, but you can't. You have to be really like hyper and happy, and it depends, like that commercial, it's supposed to be kind of sexy and, you know, kind of whispery and to make guys want to go, oh gosh, I'm going to buy my lady some lingerie kind of stuff.
I'm going to give you another test if you don't stop.
It'll just be taking over radio, I think, to a real big extent. So this is probably a really,
Next year.
yeah, this is a good time for you guys to be getting into it, probably.
Right now, are you saying, though, that there's not very many women in broadcasting?
Well, there's not a whole heck of a lot of women.
I'd say there's probably more men.
Oh, definitely. If you listen to, like, what did you say, KEZE? How many women do you hear? Yeah. Yeah, but how many women do you hear on that station, you know, really?
Annual very special sale.
Women were in your class at school.
You know, it's funny because women, actually it was probably even, but a lot of the women, or a lot of the girls went into copywriting and like writing scripts and stuff, ads for commercials.
As opposed to announcing.
Yeah, as opposed to going on air. So that was kind of weird. I don't know why that is. If you guys had a choice, what would you do?
On air.
See, yeah, like I don't know how that works out that all the women decided to get into copywriting. But
How many women are there at KBS?
there are quite a few. A lot of BCIT grads are female. There's actually the morning news girl, the main news girl is female. The main news girl is female, figure that one out. And the girl, the person that does news out of Nelson is female too.
So do you work shifts then? You're saying you work on the weekends and stuff.
I work 7 hours a week. I work 7 days a week because weekends I work on air. I do like the 6 to midnight, and then during the week I do reporting. Like I cover the Leafs, like sports reporting, and just community events and different
They
things.
like call you, just you don't really know when they're gonna call you.
To cover something?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, you have to be very flexible, I think, and really, especially in sports, like anything could happen.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Is that sort of a drawback? I mean, are there any drawbacks to your job? You've given us all the pluses so far, except for the money.
Yeah.
And then being on call. That would be another sort of.
I think that would be it.
deterrent,
Just the money is really bad. Like it's really bad. If it's something you like to do, if you like people and you want to get your voice heard, you know, a lot, and you think that's cool, well, that's what you do. Do you guys have any other questions, or?
I'm empty.
Do you do any of your like commercial ads while you're there at the station, or is it like all pre-recorded?
It's all. You mean while you're on air? Do you do any
Yeah.
commercials?
Like, do they go from the DJ to you, or do they just kind of tape it?
They do sometimes. Like if I'm on location, like did anybody go to Snowfest?
Yeah.
This weekend? That's the dance you guys were talking about, Mike and Mike.
Oh
That Snowfest dance. I was on location there, and then they would throw to me and they'd go, and Kelsi Michaels is on location at, you know, and then you'd, whatever, yeah, we're at Snowfest, all these kids are really riding it, you know, and they're just doing this and this and this, and that would be kind of, you know, you're on location stuff.
That sounds great. Well, do you have any advice just to wrap up here?
No. No, actually, I'm too young for this.
Okay.
Like I said, if you really want to get into it and you really, like, I don't think it matters, even if you guys, like half of you probably don't really care about radio or TV or the media, but but you know, if you want to, whatever you decide to get into, and I know I heard this a zillion times, and don't look so bored. I've heard this a zillion times, and I know it sounds like you're, you know, so old and stuff, but you really have to like what you get into, because for the amount of time I work, like 80 to 90 hours a week, if I didn't like it, you know, I'd be screwed. Oh, can I say that on show cable? You know, like you really, like, and it doesn't matter what it is. It's probably not going to be radio or TV or whatever, you know. It doesn't matter. But you just really got to like whatever you're going to do. And that's it.
Because you're going to be doing it for a while.
Exactly, that's right.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today,
problem.
Kelsi.
Thanks, you guys, for being
Everything. I'd like to welcome Donna Macdonald. She's a caseworker at our Member of Parliament, Lyle Kristiansen's office. So here she is. She's your guest. You can ask her questions. You can discover what she does in her typical day. How about that?
So any guesses what a caseworker might do?
Work on cases.
Very good. That's right. Yeah, I work on cases, which means that I essentially respond to people's problems. People bring in difficulties that they're having with different federal government agencies, or they're mad about some particular action the government's taken or something like that. And so I just respond on a case-by-case basis.
You have another life too.
Yeah, I actually, I get, that's sort of my paid job, although it's only a part-time job. That's sort of a 9-to-1 job every day. And then as well, I'm also on City Council here in Nelson. So I've kind of, after a life of working at a lot of different jobs, I've kind of ended up in the political realm here, both as an elected person and in my paid work as well.
What did you start out doing?
Well,
What was your other jobs?
my other jobs, well, when I went off to university after high school, I thought I was going to be a social worker. So I spent some time studying that, and then I didn't like that very well. And so I did some office work, and then I actually moved to the Kootenay and decided that I would try something completely different. And I took the forestry program at Selkirk College in Castlegar, and worked in forestry for a number of years, and even worked overseas in forestry.
Oh yeah, you went to Mozambique, right?
I went to Mozambique. Where's Mozambique?
Africa.
Right. Very good.
That was with CUSO,
With
right?
CUSO, yeah, which is an organization that sends people overseas to work usually for 2 years at a time. So that's a really good experience to do. And then when we came back, I went again to Selkirk College and took the writing program there. And worked for a publisher in the Slocan Valley, and then worked as editor of the Kootenay Weekly Express newspaper for a couple of years up until last fall when I started as a caseworker. So in a way I've kind of come full circle, because this job as a caseworker is kind of like social work in a way, that oftentimes what people need is just someone to talk to. You know, they're really mad that the government is going to put a tax on this or increasing taxes on cigarettes or something like that. And they just need someone to blow off steam to. So good listening skills are really important on the job, and also in pursuing solutions to people's problems, you have to be able to write good letters, really effective letters that sort of punch away at the government department and say, come on, this isn't fair. So written skills and oral skills are really important in my job. So I've kind of, this job that I'm doing now kind of mixes together all the other jobs that I've done in the course of the years.
Which of the jobs did you like the best that you did?
Gee, that's a good question. I think I liked all of them at the time I was doing them. When I started, I don't know how, if you kids think you're going to have sort of one career in your life. That's what I always thought, was that I would have one career and I would love it and I would be an expert and I would do it for the rest of my life. But as it turned out, I would get really involved in something and work at it, and then something else would catch my attention. So I've actually had a whole number of different jobs, and I have liked them all at the time, but then have needed a change and moved on to something else.
How much do you get paid?
Well, at my job with our Member of Parliament, I get about $16.50 an hour, and then I get benefits as well, a dental plan and medical and those kinds of things. So it's certainly one of the better paid jobs I've had in a very long time, because a lot of jobs, you have locally working for small businesses like the publisher or the newspaper, they don't pay very well, and so you struggle along in hopes that someday they will. But so this one's pretty good. And then the City Council being an elected official is kind of considered a volunteer job almost. So
But you get a stipend.
we get a stipend of $575 a month. And that last time I figured that out when I added up all the meetings that I go to and the time I spend on the telephone and all the material I have to read, it worked out to about $8 or $9 an hour. So you don't go into that kind of politics for money, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Do you have sort of longer-term political ambitions, Donna?
I don't know. I'm really evaluating that right now, actually. And I think, just getting back to your question almost, the thing that I really love doing most of all is writing and editing. So I think that probably that's what I'm going to return to rather than pursuing a political career.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're plugging our local media here. Right. You enjoyed working at the Express.
Yeah. Yeah, newspaper work's really exciting. Are any of you interested in writing or journalism?
I'm uninterested in other students.
What about politics? Are any of you involved in your student council or anything? No? Do you have a student council?
Yeah.
Trafalgar.
Yeah.
You had a question about Donna's family, right?
Yeah, do you have a family, and if so, how does your family react to your job?
I do have a family. I have a husband and an 11-year-old daughter, and they're really important because I need their support a lot, because especially being on City Council, I have a lot of meetings to go to and a lot of work to do there.
A lot of evenings.
A lot of evenings out, 3, 4, 5 evenings a week sometimes. So it's really important to have my family's support. And I don't know, I mean, I guess my daughter doesn't really have much choice in it, because that's
You pay for
in
your
ways.
stuff?
Sorry? But certainly my husband is really important, and and that I have to have his support in order to be able to go out all the time and do all these things.
Do a lot of women do your job? Like, is it rare?
The caseworker job, I think there's actually quite a few women who work for elected either MLAs at the provincial level or MPs at the federal level.
What about in politics? Like, what about in?
But certainly, yeah. When I was first elected to City Council in '88, I was the only woman on council for the first couple years, and then we had another election in 1990, and now there's actually 50% men and 50% women.
On Nelson City Council?
On Nelson City Council,
Really?
yeah. Other than the mayor sort of tips it to the male side,
Right.
but there's six councillors, or aldermen as they're called. We're trying to introduce a new word, councillors. And there's three men and 3 women. So actually, quite a few women do get involved at this local level, but it's, it is really demanding on your family and your work time. But then fewer and fewer women, I think, go on to the provincial or federal level of politics, just because the demands are ever greater at those levels. A lot of travel and being away from your family.
Are there any parts of your job that you could really do without? You really don't like them?
Well, there's certainly some mornings when I go in and the first time the phone rings, I just want to tell them to go away. But that's what I'm there for, is to answer the phone and be a friendly, helpful voice at the other end. So I just have to overcome that reluctance. It's just I'm a slow starter in the morning, so it's sometimes hard to get going.
Right. So just kind of to wind up here, was there any more questions from you? I wanted to ask you about your education when you were sort of in junior high and senior high. Like, do you have any sort of suggestions about what?
Boy, that was a long time ago, Fran.
But you did go on to university and you did your social work degree. Did you complete a degree?
No,
in that?
I did 2 years at university.
Right, but you had to have your math and science, and did you have a language as well?
Yeah. Well, we had to take French, so I had that French.
And did you need that for the forestry as well?
The forestry required more of the sciences and math and biology and that kind of thing. So certainly your high school work is really important, I think, and sometimes it's hard to look ahead and figure out that you're going to need something 10 years down the road, but certainly good marks and a good effort at your schoolwork is really important.
Okay, great, Donna. Thanks for being with us today.
Okay, thanks.
I, again, like to welcome our next guest, Sally Mackenzie. And Sally, now you can maybe explain to people what you do.
Well, I'm a joiner.
Does anyone know what that is?
What do you mean?
And it doesn't mean I join organizations, although I do that sometimes too. Joinery is like cabinet making, but that's not what they call it in this province. They call it different things in different provinces in Canada, and in Europe they call it cabinet making. But the difference between that and carpentry is that in carpentry you work on the site if you're doing major construction. And what I do is I build things like cabinets, doors, windows, kind of fittings for the insides of offices and houses, and then I build those in the shop and then I install them for the most part. So that's what a joiner does. I'm working by myself, running a small business right now, so I also will do renovations and do some carpentry work, but I don't do foundations.
How much money do you make?
Well, I'm not sure, because I'm running my own business at this point. I think I'm and I'm only working part-time. That's why I'm working on my own. I think I'm probably netting about $12 or $13 an hour. I have shop overhead as well as, you know, my own wages to pay. The wages are relatively good. People are willing to pay a reasonable wage for that kind of work to be done.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that people tend to go toward men for this kind of work to be done?
I think people tend to work word of mouth. When people are looking for someone to do this kind of work, they ask their friends whether they know anybody, or they ask whether they've had any that kind of work done lately, whether they can recommend anyone. Because I know that most of the work that I get comes from people either that I know or who know people I know. And you know, I haven't done much advertising, and I don't need to at this point. So
you have a steady flow, and it just keeps coming just as you like it?
Yeah, a steady trickle, which is what I want.
Great, great.
What's the name of your business?
Doesn't have a business, it's just me.
Doesn't have a name.
Doesn't have a name, yeah.
What don't you like about your work? Like, what's the downfall?
The downside of it is probably that I sort of chose joinery rather than carpentry because I thought it would involve less working in the rain and hauling, you know, 4x8 sheets of plywood around all the time. But there is still, you know, a certain amount of sort of hard, heavy work, and working in places that, you know, when you're doing additions and things like that, having to crawl into attics and under houses and things like that. That is it's probably my least favorite part. Yeah.
So how did you get into this?
Well, I had done a variety of things before I went into trades. I'd done a wildland recreation program at Selkirk College, just because I wasn't sure what else I wanted to do, and somebody said, "Oh, you'll be interested in this," so I did it. And then while I was at Selkirk College, I got involved with student newspapers and ended up working for the Canadian University Press, Canadian Student Newspaper Organization, for a year and a half. And when I got through with that, I realized that what I wanted to do in terms of my job was something that I could probably support myself at, and that would be straightforward, and that would be a job that I could do and not have to take home with me. And something I could see what I'd done at the end of the day, which newspaper work is not like that. And so I chose joinery. And that was sort of how I ended up there. I'd always been interested in woodworking. And
so where did you take your training?
I took my training at Pacific Vocational Institute, which I think is now part of BCIT. And I did what was then the pre-apprenticeship program, which was a 6-month program. And it's changed now. It's a track program, so you go in and sort of and take more general courses and then specialize as you get into it.
Wait a minute, what do you mean by track? I mean,
it's the name of the program. It's the entry-level program at vocational schools.
So do you have to have grade 12 to get into it? Or?
It depends, I think, on which trade you're interested in. Mm-hmm. Carpentry and joinery do require grade 12. Mm-hmm.
Do you need all your math and science?
Maths are really necessary because you end up working.
You have to measure accurately.
I spent the first year that I was working, doing joinery kind of work, learning how to add and subtract fractions quickly. Yeah. Because the trade is not metric yet. So you're still working in, you know, 48 3/8 inches and 12 3/4. You know, it's like you have to be able to add those numbers in your head. So that, and you're working with angles, so geometry is important. It would be, I didn't have any drafting skills. I never took drafting in high school, but that would have been really useful because when you're doing joinery work, you need to be able to, someone says, you know, I want a cabinet on this wall that looks this way for this purpose, and you have to be able to design it and draw it up so that you can figure out how to build it. And they do teach you drafting if you take the 4-year apprenticeship program, which I did, but a lot of the fellows I went to school with had taken drafting and they had a lot easier time of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you did a 4-year apprenticeship?
Yes, it's a 4-year apprenticeship. You go back to school once a year for a month every year, and then you have to have a certain number of hours in between.
What do you think the sort of job security is for, or the longer range for that kind of occupation is? in BC?
I think it's quite good. It's not good in this area. Most of the jobs that are available in joinery are in the Lower Mainland, where most of the furniture and cabinets and things like that get manufactured. So in anywhere outside the Lower Mainland, or maybe big centres like Kelowna or Prince George, you're either working doing doors and windows, sash and door, or you're working on your own doing small jobs, or with with other people, but in a small company doing whatever comes. Which is it's nice. It's more variety, but it means you also have to deal with all the aspects of the trade. It's like doing the estimating and buying the materials and doing the billing and the bookwork. Whether you do it yourself, but that has to be looked after. Whereas it's different than working for a big company where that's all looked after by somebody else.
Do you have any family responsibilities?
I don't.
No.
I have sort of a little farm with some chickens and a big garden, but that's sort of.
So the hours and things like that don't interfere with your life or anything?
No, and that's partly why I'm working part-time right now.
Right.
Is that I have, a lot of other things that I'm doing, and I don't want to work 40 hours a week.
So you don't have to?
50 hours a week. Yeah. Yeah, and so because I'm working on my own, I can adjust it to my schedule.
I was wondering, when you work with men, do you find you get harassed because they think they can do it better?
I found when I'm working with men that when you first start with a new crew, it's like you have to sort of go in prepared and ready to handle it all, and ready to sort of, like, you have to be on, and you have to watch what's going on and make sure that you establish yourself, and that they don't get away with sort of treating you badly at first.
Do you tell them off?
If necessary. Usually my experience has been that a lot of them are sort of a little unsure when a woman comes on the job site. And so you've got the upper hand for a period of time because they don't know what to expect. And having been there before I do, I worked with men, they may not have worked with women before. But once they get to know you, and if things go relatively well, then I've had a fair amount of pretty good support from the men I've worked with.
That's good.
Is it tough starting your own business?
Not really. It hasn't been. I haven't been running my own business for long. I don't know. At this point, I don't know if I can make a living with the amount of time I'm putting into it. And we'll see whether how it goes.
Any other questions? Okay. Do you, I was going to ask you, in terms of career choices, do you have any advice maybe for anyone that wants to go into this field? Like you mentioned earlier that you needed your math and the drafting, that's right. And so, anything else you want to add to that?
Well, certainly that any shop courses you can take in school are useful. Things like English and geography, those kind of things don't come into the joinery as such, but in running your own business, being able to deal effectively with people and sound coherent, and when you write up an invoice or when you make an estimate and you present it, if it's not doesn't look good, people sort of tend to assume that maybe you don't know what you're doing, or that you aren't somebody that they want to hire. So neatness and tidiness and all those kind of things is really important.
Okay, well that's great, Sally. Thank you. Oh, okay, sure, go ahead.
Do you find that when you apply for jobs that you have to make yourself try extra hard because you're a woman? Like for some men jobs, like.
I think that's what she was touching on earlier.
When I've gone, it's easier in some ways running my own business because people who don't want to hire a woman aren't going to call me.
Yeah, when you're on your own.
So I don't have to deal with those people. It's sort of a self-selection process. But when I've gone applying for jobs in the past, I've felt like I had to work pretty hard to convince them that I was credible and that it was worthwhile taking a chance on me, which is what they felt like they were doing.
Yeah. Have you ever gone back to places a few times and tried harder and tried to show them that you can do better?
Well, the first place I ever applied for a job, I went in and filled out an application, and unbeknownst to me, the fellow who the secretary took the application, took it into the manager, and she came out and said, he'll call you. Well, he apparently took one look at the application and said, I don't hire women.
Oh.
And she wouldn't speak to him. I mean, she wouldn't bring him his coffee, and she started putting the pressure on, so he went home and complained to his wife about how hard done by he was by his secretary just because he wouldn't hire a woman. And his wife said, well, she's right. What do you mean you won't hire a woman? So finally he hired me in order to prove to the two of them that they were wrong and I was going to cause trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked there for a year and a half and had a good time, and they were quite pleased with my work.
Stand up for your rights.
Yeah, well, and having other women support me was really important.
That's great. I was going to ask you, what other jobs have you done, Sally?
Well, I worked in parks and recreation for a couple of years. I did sort of sawmill work for a while. I worked, as I say, with student newspapers, and I worked at the Women's Centre for 3-4 years as the coordinator. I sort of took a break in my trades work.
Right. Great. Okay, well, that leads nicely into our next guest, who is Daphne Van Alstine. She's a parks naturalist. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Like, once you get into the...
As a way of introduction to our next guest here, I'm with Daphne Van Alstine, and she's one of the people who has volunteered to participate in a role modeling project. Now, this is a project that is sponsored by the West Kootenay Women's Association, and it's an 18-week project, and the idea is to set up a registry of working women in our community so that they can go into the schools and talk with junior secondary school kids and just make that connection, because we all learn best by example. And to sort of expand and encourage the young people to think about their careers and consider all of their options. And so now, as I say, we're in a second stage event, and we're actively recruiting role models, women working in our community. So if any of our viewers out there, if you have a challenging and rewarding profession and you'd like to share that with junior secondary school students or all students in our community, we invite you to contact the Role Modeling Project at the West Kootenay Women's Association, and I'll give you that number a little later on. And now, for you here, I have a couple of questions to ask you. Can anyone tell me what the top 3 career choices for women were in 1971?
Bookkeeping. Lawyer, doctor.
No. Bookkeeping, secretary, and sales.
Hey, that's true. And do you know what the top 3 were in 1986?
Same.
Oh. Oh, you knew.
I didn't know that.
Anyway, with this statistic, I want to address a question that some of our viewers may have on their mind, like, why, for this project, why is it only women role models? And I'm going to quote let's see, this is Consensus of Canada 1986 statistics. And it says, while men in the labor force do a variety of jobs, women continue to be concentrated in relatively few low-paying occupations. By concentration, we mean that women are overrepresented in a few occupations and underrepresented in most, relative to their overall share of the employment. And remember what we said earlier? How many women comprise the Canadian labor force?
44%.
Very good.
No, they've been doing their homework.
Yes, very good. And because most Canadian women will span 25 to 30 years of their adult life in the workforce, it's important that we look for satisfying, well-paying jobs, right? Which brings us to our next guest, Daphne Van Alstine, who is a parks interpreter. Some of you may already know her, and she's also a naturalist. So, Daphne, tell us what your day is like.
So my day is like, first of all, I work seasonally, so it's not for me a full-time job. It actually was about 8 years ago. And then I work for the BC Parks, and as you know, any government agency over the years has been cut back, and whittled down. So it's just a seasonal job for myself. And for most people that actually work as a summer naturalist, it's just a summer job, it's a seasonal job. It's an excellent job, mind you. I wouldn't trade it for anything else. It's the best job I have. I'm lucky perhaps because the visitor center is there. Do you know where Kokanee Creek Park is? Yep. And the West Kootenay Visitor Center? If the visitor center wasn't there, it wouldn't be more of it wouldn't be as much of a full-time job. It would just be perhaps a summer job as well. So there aren't very many people like myself having a career as a park interpreter, because first of all you need a facility where you're going to work from, and of course an agency who's going to hire you. And in my case it's BC Parks. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't work as a naturalist or an interpreter with other agencies. That's coming. There's going to be more of them. It's a great job. How many of you have been out there on my programs? You have? When you were little, when you were in elementary school, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't see too many Trafalgar students coming out. But in June and September, we have extensive school programs, and that's probably when some of you have come out. In June, we have programs that are focused around, obviously, natural history. It's not as much academic happening in June because everybody's out there at the end of school and it's fun days time. And in September, of course, most of you have probably been out to see our the Kokanee programs that we offer to interpret the spawning Kokanee.
So what other jobs are you qualified for?
Oh, all kinds of jobs. First of all, I'm a substitute teacher. I'm not a teacher. I don't have my certificate, but I am a substitute teacher. When you to be a park interpreter, you obviously have to do a lot of public speaking. So any job that would have anything to do with public speaking, which there's lots of, by the way. Also being a naturalist, having a science background. Right now, actually, I have a very a small contract for Selkirk College. I'm teaching the course is called Environmental Issues. It's basically an ecology course, though, and that's just a small part-time contract. I'm doing a few other contracts, either writing brochures, redoing signs and displays. So my background as working as a naturalist has offered me a lot of other skills.
So what is your education then?
I have a degree through University of Victoria. It's in geography and environmental studies. And I know one question that somebody was asking before about, you know, when you're in high school or junior high school and you've decided that you want to go into sciences. Well, I was that way too. I knew I wanted to do something in science. I never did really know what I was going to do until I got into it. And the common sort of thought is, well, who needs bookkeeping and accounting? And I never took them either. I am now a contractor, so I have my own business. So I wish I had taken some of those. Instead, I focused more towards I took woodworking. I took a lot of shop because I wanted to do what all the other women weren't doing. And so I took all those courses just sort of to be in sort of spite. And I specifically made a point of not taking bookkeeping and accounting because that's what all women do, so I'm going to be different. But now I wish I did have some of them. So, I mean, I would really suggest that you get a well-rounded sort of education, like take as many things as you possibly can, even if you think you don't need them. If you are going to be in your own business, it's really nice to have accounting and bookkeeping.
Yeah.
And obviously I wouldn't be where I was if I didn't have a good background in sciences.
So, do you have any questions?
Yeah, do you have a dress code at your workplace?
Certainly do. Actually, we have uniforms, which is pretty easy. All you do is you put this on, and it's very nice, actually, because you don't have to spend a lot of money on clothing, and everybody's equal.
What color is it?
Well, when I worked for BC Parks, BC Parks, when I was a staff member of BC Parks, it was awful. It's I was going to say that, but I didn't. Khaki, not even a nice khaki green and dark green pants, and don't actually do much for you. As contractors now, it's we at first called ourselves bus drivers, but it's not quite that color. It's navy pants and a pale blue shirt.
Not bad.
Mailman.
This is as a contractor?
As a contractor.
BC Parks.
Yeah, it's sort of as a contractor, you do your own business, but at the same time, BC Parks says, but you will all wear these uniforms. So all contractors in parks, whether you're maintenance or whether you're visitor services, which is what interpreters are under, they all wear the same color. Just the badge is different.
Do a lot of women do your job?
They do now, actually. When interpretation started in BC, which was a long time ago, in the 50s, it was all men, and not necessarily younger men, like not high school or just university students. And it was all men, and over the course of time, the job became a seasonal type job. And when I first got into it, it was almost half and half, but the pay was pretty good then for government employees for the time. I was one of those people who I put myself through university completely from my summer job. But you can't do that now, can you? At least that's what I've heard. You can't even pay for your dorm or something. But since the government wages stayed, sorry, just to finish, the government wages stayed the same and everybody else's wages went up and cost of living went up. And so what happened is it wasn't as great pay as everyone sort of thought it was, and so it ended up being more women in it. And they think it was because of the pay.
Do you have any family responsibilities?
Yes, I do. I have a husband and I have 2 children, grade 2 in kindergarten. So being a seasonal job actually works out because it's I'm pretty well gone when I'm working. May to October almost it's very intense and it's really busy June, July and August. But it's a flexible type job. I'm my own boss. We work a lot of evenings and often because of what I'm doing programs for kids. They're now old enough that I can actually take them to work with me. So it really works out.
What is your salary?
What is my salary? What's the salary range you can expect? Because it really varies depending on if you want to say, do you actually get paid for all your hours that you work or what do you actually get paid? So the salary can range. If I hired, for example, if you wanted to be a park interpreter and work for me this summer, you would be working 35 hours a week. So that's 7 hours a day. And you would be probably getting about between $10 and $11. I don't get that. I get between 15 and 18 because I'm a supervisor. That's a supervisor. That's someone who's doing the bookkeeping and supervising and organizing programs, training, recruiting, and actually it doesn't even work out to be that because that's what I get paid for the 35 hours, but you always put more in, more than that in when you're the boss.
Right. What about the teaching contracts? So they're more lucrative, aren't they? Yeah, that really varies. That can be sometimes $20 an hour, and that sounds great, but that has included your prep time. So if you're gonna teach a 3-hour class, you've got to get all your materials ready and things prior to that. But I think if you're going to contract to be teaching at the college level, you can expect about $20 an hour. But you do need to be prepared. You brought something with you here today, didn't you? Or
Fran asked me to bring something as a prop of my job. Well, a lot of what I do as an interpreter in the summertime, I'm giving programs in the Visitor Centre Theatre, and often we give slideshows or prop talks or whatever. But when we do our programs, our programs are for all ages, 3 to 93, we always say. That's hopefully listening anyways. And so what we do is we try to inspire a lot of people, and we aim a lot at the child and everyone. So a lot of props that we do use actually involve making people a little bit interested. So maybe you've seen some of these props, I don't know. And they brightened up immediately. See what the props do? So I brought along some of my friends that we use when we talk about the fish, which is much more interesting than me just standing here talking about the fish. So I'd like to introduce you to, this is Scarlett, and this is Humphrey. Any reason why?
Because he's got a hump.
He's got a hump. There you go. You just learned something. How can you tell a difference between a male and a female kokanee?
Male's got a hump.
There you go. See how much you can learn from a puppet.
This is very good.
Our puppets, we use our puppets a lot. We've in the last couple of years anyways, we've started really involving using puppets for props. It's one aspect of the job that's really fun. A big part of my job as an interpreter actually is drama and acting out, so if you're interested in that, that's a good one to take. You're very interested? See? I'm not this color now. I'm going to turn this color in September.
So drama and acting and your language skills and all of those things would lend themselves well to if someone was considering a career in this field.
That's correct. And also when you're doing contracting and you're dealing with government agencies, you need to be articulate. You need to be able to write correctly. Believe me, it's important, you guys. You might not think so. But it really is important. And there might be a time later on you go, I wish I'd spent more time on that. I wish I'd really learned that well. Because how you present yourself, there's a lot of competition out there. So.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for being with us today, Daphne. It's been really interesting. And just before we go, I wanted to ask you a couple more questions. For each dollar a man earns, do you have any idea what a woman earns? This is in Canada.
25 cents.
No,
8 cents.
it's better than that.
I was going to say 25 cents.
No, 68 cents. And one of the reasons is because women have, as I said earlier, tended to concentrate themselves in the lower paying occupations. This is why this project is focusing on expanding your career options so you choose from a broader range of occupational fields, so that you just can have more choices when you get out there in the world in order to support your lifestyle that you want to have in the future. And another little quiz here. Women are 98% of the dental hygienists and assistants in BC, and what percentage are they of dentists?
10.
Hey, very good. Well, it's 9, really.
How'd you know that?
We
Look at the sheet.
we looked at, we phoned all around the Kootenays, and we found one woman dentist in Kristiansen, I think it was. Does anybody have any idea what percentage of engineering force are women?
Ollie?
It's 3. Just a little food for thought.
Are these, sorry, just as an, are those by choice, or is it because they actually couldn't go into it? I mean, the statistics are interesting, but is that because you guys, people don't choose to be dentists? You'd rather work at a job that maybe doesn't take as much time commitment, or?
I think that it's part of both, as when I mentioned earlier that in 1986, the young girls just were, according to a Labour Canada report, they weren't planning to be part of the labour force. And by 1990, that had shifted. They were now planning, but they really didn't have an awareness of how they could reach their goals.
That's right.
Which is, and then that's supported by a local survey that we did, and it just sort of indicates that there needs to be more sort of education to put in sort of some of the links so that people can make the connections between what it actually takes to get a job and what the job's actually like.
Right, so, exactly. You can do whatever you want to do.
So I'd like to thank you all for being here today, and I think we've all learned something from our guests. And I hope our viewers out there, if any of you are interested in participating in the project, if you have challenging and interesting work and like to share your stories with any of the students in our neighborhood, we'd like to hear from you. You can contact the West Kootenay Women's Association and ask for myself, Fran, or Michelle, my colleague, and we'd be happy to hear from you or give you some more information and send you out a questionnaire. And I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors too. As I said, the West Kootenay Women's Association sponsored this project, but the project is funded by the Secretary of State and the Ministry of Women's Equality for the province of British Columbia. So I'd like to thank those funders for making this project possible.
And the kids at Trafalgar.
And the kids at Trafalgar. I mentioned you already.
Give yourselves a hand, yay.
Yes, give yourself a hand. You've been really wonderful. Thank you.
See you.
And thanks for coming down.